Hello, this is Catherine from Accelerated Reader Reading Books for You. Today I will be reading Chapter 11 from The Moon and the Magic Box by Michael Ross, illustrated by Magdalena Adic. Before I begin reading, I would like to give a big thanks to the author for sending me this book to read on my channel. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Chapter 11. Morgue-Mangle of the Dammers. Cringeworthy and his cohorts conducted a fruitless search of the farmhouse. At every step of the way, Glynis made it as difficult as possible for him. They searched the whole house, pulled the contents of drawers out onto the floor, and so on. It just so happened Glynis had decided to emulsion the stairway ceiling and was in the middle of it when Cringeworthy showed up. There was no hello or how are you, just his overall rudeness in ordering the soldiers and MPs to search around her house. Glynis remembers wondering why Cringeworthy didn't remove the stylish, round sunglasses he was wearing when he stormed into her house. They didn't suit him. She decided he looks like some military drug baron. The only laughable moment to it all was when Cringeworthy, who was standing at the bottom of the stairs, craning his neck to look upwards at Glynis, perched on her ladder, said to her, "I don't suppose you are going to tell me where your son and the girl are hiding?" Glynis turned on top of the ladders and looked down at Cringeworthy and very sarcastically said, "Of course I could tell you." Glynis turned back to paint another section of ceiling, and then turned around again and told him, "But I'm not going to." Glynis turned back to paint some more of the white emulsion on the ceiling. Cringeworthy was incensed with her reply, and angrily replied, "Now look here, you will comply or I will make life very difficult for you. Do you understand?" At this point, Glynis had loaded her brush with the white paint and accidentally, on purpose, tipped it. So a large portion of paint, the size of a saucer, shot off the end of the brush and made its way directly towards Cringeworthy. By the time Cringeworthy saw the large saucer-shaped dollop of paint aiming for him, it was too late. It hit him square in the middle of his forehead. The impact of the paint was so strong that it spread out over his face, covered the sunglasses he was wearing, and splattered all over the tops of his shoulders. There was a momentary gasp of air from Cringeworthy. Everyone in his vicinity stopped and looked at him. Very slowly, he removed his sunglasses, which left two unsplattered, perfect circles around his eyes. His whole head was completely covered with white paint. Glynis cocked her head over and simply said, "Oops, so sorry," and carried on painting. Cringeworthy limped away to get cleaned up, but realized it was all such a mess. There was nothing for it but to have to return to camp. He would need to change into a completely fresh uniform. He ordered everyone else to return with him. By now, Glynis knew that Blackmood was instrumental in helping Troy, Desme, and Nesbit escape from the camp. Just before she left, she looked up at Glynis and caught her eye. Glynis winked at her, and Blackmood left with just the hint of a smile on her lips. Back at camp, once Cringeworthy had changed. He had a call from one of the scientific research team requesting that he make his way to the scientist's office in the building next door. He did this and was ushered into the office of a scientist called Reggie Roundtree. He was an expert in telecommunications. When he saw Cringeworthy walking in, he excitedly began to explain to Cringeworthy what he had discovered. He explained that such is the military technology now. He was able to retrieve snippets of information from Troy's mobile. Luckily, Troy's mobile is an Apple iPhone. Reggie explained to Cringeworthy that androids are unreachable. He invited Cringeworthy to sit with him at his computer terminal and explained what he was doing while he retrieved the information he wanted. He explained he was able to retrieve snippets of data from the inbuilt voice recording app. He couldn't retrieve text messages or photographic images, and so on the computer screen, the following voice message fragments were played, with subtitles following underneath. It read as follows: "Mind-blowing. The magic box is amazing. I am getting to like Pengy, eh? He's a cool alien. Inside the box is out of this world. But we need the magic crystals or the moon will go black forever. Star maps in my head will be used, so gotta watch out for the dammers. They could spoil everything. That cringy bum is getting up my nose. I'm going to. First chance I get, mark my words. Still not much time left to. And we will have to be at the latest, otherwise the moon will be lost." Cringeworthy asked Reggie to play it again and ordered Blackmood to take notes. He was also given a printed transcript of the recording. Cringeworthy smiled his awkward smile. His Hitler-type mustache seemed to perch precariously on his top lip, threatening to fall off at a moment's notice. Blackmood found herself digging her nails into the palm of her hands to stop from laughing. Reggie remarked that he had some other information that would be very helpful. He explained he could pinpoint within 10 meters exactly where Troy's phone would be at any given time. At this point, under the guise of taking notes, no one noticed that Blackmood had made a note of Troy's mobile number. That information could be very beneficial at some point. Cringeworthy stood up. He never looked so happy. Blackmood frowned a little because he looked like he was going to kiss Reggie for that very useful piece of information. Instead, he slapped him on his back and congratulated him and kept repeating the words, "Excellent, excellent, excellent." Cringeworthy rushed out to put together a security detail to catch the prisoners. He ordered Reggie to accompany him, and using his equipment, he could lead them to Troy. Cringeworthy, dumb, darling Blackmood. Some soldiers and MPs were told to report back in 15 minutes. They would then jump into 2 SUVs and be off to capture Troy and his gang. 2 things would completely scupper Cringeworthy's plans, though. First of all, During that 15-minute break, Blackmood managed to sneak away on the pretense of going to the ladies, and texted Troy to tell him his mobile had been compromised and that Cringeworthy now had a gist of everything that had happened. The box, Pengy, although he had no idea what he looked like or indeed that he was an alien. The search for the crystals, etc. Meanwhile, in a galaxy far away, on a violent planet called Pyromordial, the spiritual leader of the Morgumangle, was having a hissy fit. Remember, Morgumangle had changed their name, and they were now known as the Dammers, or even, to give them their full title, the notorious dreaded Dammers. Pyromordial was a volcanic planet. There were very few places where a spaceship could land because 95% of the surface was covered in volcanoes. Not little itsy-bitsy ones like the ones on planet Earth, but mammoth ones that continue to spew out sulfuric gases, hot air, and molten lava. It was called the Nasty Red Planet, or NRP, for that very reason. This was the home of the Dammers. There was one volcano, probably the largest one, 10 times larger in scale than Mount Everest. The Dammers had made their home there over 6 million years ago, for a good reason. It all helped to maintain the secrecy of the Dammers. Being the most feared assassins anywhere, they wanted secrecy. 6 million years ago, the then spiritual leader called Morgumeeg began carefully to set up their colony in the middle of the largest volcano. Impossible, you say? Well, Dammers can be very smart when they want to be. They constructed a complicated series of tunnels, all lined with magical materials that shielded them from the heat, and other tunnels that diverted the hot lava around them before erupting out of the top. They never accepted visitors or clients on Pyromordial. They would always meet them on neutral ground to discuss and plan an assassination and negotiate its cost in Crodoyo diamonds, the most valuable commodity in all the cosmos. The Crodoyo diamonds were magical, no doubt about it. Still, it wasn't just their inherent magical properties that made them so valuable and sought after. It was the method of farming them that made them special. There is a small slug-like animal that can only be found on the planet Palitali-Malimi, or PM for short. They are, without a doubt, the cutest slugs you will ever come across. Known as polypoops, they are very adorable. Sure, their eyes come out from their heads on long, thin stalks, but their eyes are an attractive deep blue color, and they have the most beautiful long black eyelashes. They have a mouth, but no teeth, and are always smiling. They create a sense of calm in anyone near them, and live to the grand old age of around 170 Earth years. In all that time, within their bodies that have little arms and legs, they generate the Crodoyo crystal. Each polypoop will only ever generate one Crodoyo crystal in their entire lifetime, and this crystal will be kept with all the others in a secure fortress on Palitili-Malimi. And I mean a very secure fortress. There has been the odd, very well planned theft of the Crodoyo crystals in the past. These thefts can only be carried out by the most sophisticated thieves in the cosmos. But no matter how sophisticated the Dammers were, they couldn't find the planet Pali-Tili-Mali-Me. They had heard of it. They knew it was the source of the Crodoyo crystals, but could not find it. It was elusive to the Dammers, and because of it, was making them look a little stupid to the rest of the species that live in the cosmos. And because of it, their reputation was going downhill. A Crodoyo crystal is very valuable and is one of the most expensive sought-after currencies in the cosmos, and number one on the Dammers' most sought-after list. The Morgumangle was on his throne, in the middle of the Dammer kingdom in their volcano. He was in the foulest of moods. The thought of coming into possession of these crystals excited him, but he was also frustrated because it was taking his minions too long to capture them all. He couldn't care less that the crystals are used to keep the moon orbiting the earth bright and well lit. He just wanted the crystals for building up his resources and the reputation and envy they would bring. He had already stolen the 3 crystals that were illuminating the moon, but had since found out that there was a stash of possibly 172 crystals on Pali-Tili-Mali-Me, Pange's home planet. This was the whole reason they were pursuing Pange, his family, and the human boy, so that they could have the coordinates to Pange's planet. At this moment, because the Dammers had no idea where that planet was, it was imperative they find the boy and remove the coordinates to Pange's planet. But it was all taking too much time. Assassination contracts were mounting up, and if they didn't have success in retrieving these coordinates soon, Morgumangle decided they would have to call it a bad day and leave it alone. So he had called a meeting of what he called his cruel managers to lay down the law. They must step up their pursuit of the coordinates and the boy, and ultimately the crystals. Morgumangle gave them a pep talk. He told them that it was a win-win situation. Find the boy, get the coordinates to Pange's home planet of Pali-Tili-Mali-Me, and then they would know where Pange's planet was at long last. The Dammers' reputation would be restored, and at the same time, they would steal the Crodoyo crystals and be the wealthiest species in the cosmos. This went down pretty well with the Dammer minions, because Morgumangle made a promise to them all that every single Dammer would get a chip of a Crodoyo. In Earth money, that little chip would be the equivalent of $1 million. They all cheered and laughed, which sounded like a multitude of waste disposals being switched on. What they didn't know was that in 4 days, smack bang in the middle of Bramblewood, at precisely 8 p.m., a spaceship would land briefly to pick up Pange and the magic box, and fly off to Pange's home planet to pick up the Crodoyo crystals. Just 3 of them, and insert them into the very middle of the moon to generate the moonlight once again. This time, security would be so high on the moon, the Dammers would never ever be able to steal them again. You see, the moon is overwhelmingly essential to our planet. The moon controls our tides. It can even control the spinning of the earth, and, if not careful, change its axis and make it deviate from its regular orbit around our planet. What a disaster that would be! Morgumangle decided to send every available Dammer to planet Earth to secure the coordinates to Pangy's planet. All dammers were instructed to look carefully for thoughts or conversations of crystals. Then home in on those that were thinking about them, and scan their spirit souls for more information. This, in itself, had different effects on different species. No one knew how it could affect a human. It could leave them with no noticeable effect, or in a lifeless state, on the cusp of life and death, and everything in between. The dammers, though, were only interested in the information, and wouldn't remove someone's soul just because they could. Murgumangle had given all his troops until Thursday evening, Earth time, to complete their mission. Then they would have to leave it to cope with the massive buildup of assassination contracts falling on his lap. He was pretty sure by now, though, who specifically he wanted his dammers to check for the information he needed, and sent out telepathic messages to all those dammers now on Earth that needed to know. They had whittled the list down to 12. Well, definitely 11. They were not sure about the 12th. The dammers had never come across a dog before. It did appear to hang about with the main suspects all the time, so it must know something, they surmised. Humans do interact with it a lot, so it must be intelligent. In the end, they included it on the list. The dammers had grouped above the clouds at Crankington Haven to discuss, and then set in motion their attack on those on the list. Their names were circulated telepathically to all of them. 1. Pangy. 2. Troy. 3. Desme. 4. Jello. 5. Slurpee. 6. Bragger. 7. Cringeworthy. 8. Dumb. 9. Darling. The remaining 3 were not as crucial to the dammers, and would be investigated as a last resort, and they were Blackmoon, Glennis, and Nesbit. They prepared themselves and chanted their mantra, "Spare no souls, spare no souls, spare no souls," and they were off. Meanwhile, Bragger had an uncle that lived in a little wooden hut in a hidden cove called Beanie, which was just a little south of Crankington Haven. His uncle came from a long line of smugglers that were rife along that Cornish coast in the old days. His uncle was known as Mad Jack. He was pirate material, but that era had just passed by. From the outside, you would take one look and want to run in the opposite direction. He had a tatty black eye patch over his left eye and had his leg from his right knee amputated when he was a teenager. He didn't want an all-singing, dancing, realistic prosthetic leg. He opted for a simple wooden peg leg, as would have been worn by smugglers and pirates of old. He was balding quite a lot, but what hair he did have, he tied into a loose ponytail. He smoked a long clay pipe and used to sit on an old creaky rocking chair on the porch of his little hut, muttering old sea shanties, completely out of tune, of course. Those days towards the end of summer, when there was still a little warmth in the air, and the sunsets threw reds and gold across the sky above the sea. They were the best sunsets. He would rock away and drink slightly too much illegal rum that a friend used to distill and bring to him in the dead of night. After the accident with his leg, it must have been when he was around 18 years of age. There is a cave in the cliffs just to the left of his hut. It was very well hidden, and indeed was a favorite haunt for smugglers in the past. His father, and his father before him, used it many times to hide in when the heat was on to stop smugglers and smuggling. Of course, that all started to die out, but that cave was a legacy to Mad Jack. So he began to move things in so it became habitable. Bragger took over the mantle and began building all sorts of creature comforts, like a gas stove, gas heaters. He laid rugs on the floor, put up partitions. So it ended up with some small cozy units he called suites. The main space within the cave was where he and any friends used to meet. They could build up a barbecue near the entrance. And recently he installed equipment so they had excellent Wi-Fi. The only creature comfort missing was a toilet. For that, even now, it was a trip outside, a little walk along the beach, then into a wood. The tree on the left was for girls. It did have a makeshift screen around it, and the tree to the right was for the boys. And so it was here now that Pengy, the magic box, Troy, Desme, Bragger, Slurpy, Jello, and Nesbit were now holed up. Luckily for them, Bragger and his dad had stocked up the shelves in the makeshift kitchen with cans of food, milk, cereals, etc. It was a boy's dream come true. He was living in a cave. It was like a den to them all, and they loved it. The sound of the sea washed in, and they found they didn't need their mobiles, iPads, or laptops. But more importantly, it was a very safe place to be. Glynis stayed at home. She told them all that the army didn't want her, and she was of no use to the Dammers. Desme's father was up to speed as well, so he was invited for tea most evenings with Glynis to keep her company. Back at the cave, when they had all settled in, Pengy had got them all to huddle around a roaring fire near the entrance to the cave and proceeded to tell them what was going to be happening over the next few days and how they could help him. It was by now quite late, so everyone's faces lit up with the golden glow from the fire. Pengy came out of his magic box and stood facing them all, and started by telling them although it was a clear night, in other words, no clouds anywhere, had they not noticed how unusually dark it was outside. They all looked and nodded. He then asked them to point to the moon, and even though they searched the skies, they couldn't see it anywhere. Ah, so, minor friends, it is out there, and you cannot see it. It is dark. The magic crystals were taken by der dreaded Dammers, which is why we need to go to mine home planet to get more to make der moonshine again, yeah? But the Dammers want der crystals as well. They are very valuable. My planet has plenty of these magic crystals, so they want their directions to mine home planet to steal them as well. And I had to put directions into Troy's head for safekeeping. But soon der Dammers will know. By now he may have them. On Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Earth time, my super-duper spaceship will collect me and take me to my home planet to get crystals to save your moon. It's very important to know if I get away safely, der Dammers will give up and go away. But we'll try ever so very hard to get directions before Thursday. On top of this, we have your crazy army people try to get information about me, their magic box, and their crystals. They are nincompoops, but they could still stop us from getting to rendezvous with mine spaceship. So I need your help, please, friends, to make sure I am in their middle of Bramblewood at 8 p.m. Earth time Thursday. For an alien, Pangy could deliver a rousing speech, and they were all on their feet, whooping and shouting and slapping high fives with each other. Without a doubt, they were all behind him. And now it was time to eat. It was Jello's tummy rumbling more than anything that was telling them it was time to eat. So they brought over the sizable makeshift metal grill sheets over the campfire and plonked on sausages, burgers, sweet peppers, corn on the cobs, and chicken pieces. Desme was vegetarian, so Bragger had thoughtfully brought in some vegetarian sausages, mushrooms, salad, roasted tomatoes, and pita bread. Glennis had spent all day yesterday making delicious farmhouse granary bread and little pastries. There was diluted elderberry wine and other soft drinks as well. They were all a little preoccupied. The next 3 days, they were all going to be busy. They were all psyching themselves up for what was to happen. One thing they did know, they could give the army a good run for their money. They knew all the little secret hiding places. They knew if a dammer caught them, not to fight them, give them access to your mines, because none of them, except Troy, had the directions to Palitilly-Mally-Me, Pangy's home planet. And they would be left alone. When they finished eating, they all retired to their little suites, jumped into their sleeping bags, and went to sleep. They all had a restless few hours' sleep at first. It was excitement, the not knowing what would happen, but then the satisfaction of helping a just and worthy cause. After all, no one wanted to lose the moon. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for Chapter 12. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book.